Hey guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. My nickname is iFacePalm, and in this episode we're going to take a closer look at the famous Soviet Tier 6 T-34-85M Premium Medium Tank. And during this tank review we will be looking into whether if it's worth the go, how its tank statistics looks, we will compare it against the other variants alongside the Chinese non-premium. Afterwards we will take a look at its armor profile, we'll focus on its weak spots and strength, and afterwards I will take you guys alongside a couple of very recent battles which hopefully will give you a good idea of this tank in action. But as an extra bonus for this tank review, I will also take you guys alongside a skirmish battle, as this tank is the most preferred tank for Strongholds. And finally I will finish up with a quick sum up and my rating of this Soviet tank. Okay guys, let's get started. Okay, so what is this Soviet tank all about, and why does everyone seems to use it in, for example, the Clan and Strongholds? And is it really the strongest tier 6 tank out there? I remember when playing with this tank for the very first time, it just felt above average at best. Average in both speed, gun handling, alpha damage, view range, armor, damage per minute, and it never really stood out anywhere. And personally, I love the tanks that are standing out from the crowd. And while this tank is, yes, you guessed it, above average, I just did not seem to enjoy it and appreciate it at the time. But the thing is that this tank is like a good bottle of wine that if taken well care of and appreciated, it actually has the potential to reward you tenfold. So what I'm trying to ask here is, what is it that makes this tank the most preferred tier 6 tank for competitive gameplay? And is it as good as its reputation seems to make it? Well, let's take a look by starting out with a quick stats rundown with my current crew and tank setup. The crew that I'm currently using for the T-34-85M is primarily focused on brothers in arms, gun handling skills, camouflage and repair. For the equipment, I have selected improved rotation mechanism, the binoculars, and a gun armor. We'll go into more details in regards of my selection in just a minute. In regards of ammunition, I've selected 26 AP shells, which each is capable of a damage of 180 and with the shield penetration 144, which is not groundbreaking. And this also explains why I'm using these exact same amount of APCR shells, as they deliver a very nice average penetration value of 194, which is more than enough at this tier. Furthermore, you also receive a very nice shell velocity increase, where suddenly used shells reach a very impressive speed of 1188 versus the 950 standard. 950 standard, it is still more than enough for the majority of scenarios, but if you're shooting at long range, then the APCR shells are that much more reliable in comparison. But of course, the price tag of 175 versus the 3200, yeah, you will have to pay for the quality. And last, because I have 8 high explosive shells, is because the 26 AP and APCR shells is usually more than enough. And furthermore, I use this tank in Stronghold battles, meaning if I'm going to decap, then it's always good to have a few high explosive shells if you want to be that more certain to decap. And for the consumables, nothing out of the ordinary, a small repair kit, small first aid kit, and extra combat rations. Do keep in mind that the extra combat rations I do not use in skirmish battles, as I want to earn credits, but if I play random games, then I tend to use. So for the stats, yes, 180 alpha damage, 144 penetration. The rate of fire is actually very nice on this tank with 14.28, meaning we can fire a shell every 4.2 seconds. Furthermore, tank have very nice gun traverse speed of 57.65 degrees and a -7 degree gun depression. The aiming time is also nice with 1.97 and even the dispersion of 0.33. Do keep in mind that without the food, this dispersion rate would have been 0.35. The average damage per minute on this tank is 2571 with the current setup. It's actually very nice damage per minute for a tier 6 vehicle. So you start already to see where this is heading. It seems that we're going to have a very nice gun handling for a tier 6 vehicle at this stage. But what about the rest? Well, let's take a look. The HP 810. Yes, we are of course going to take an in-depth look at the armor profile. But the values here, yes, they seem okay. Seems to be angled somewhat, not perfectly, on the front and slightly on the sides. But it doesn't really stand out. Well, the thing is, about this specific tank, it actually has better armor than most would believe. Because this particular tank really leaves it up to the tank commander. The engine power offers us a very nice horsepower per ton of 15.3, which means it can get to 53 an hour of top speed and 20 reverse. This is very important, especially in Strongholds, where repositioning your group or attacking a flank as fast as possible is necessary. And even the traverse speed of 54.86 is also good. The camo values when stationary and when moving are actually looking quite nice for a medium tank. And last, the view range of 509 meters, yeah, definitely within acceptable limits. And yes, and one of the reasons why I have chosen to use the binoculars is that this tank allows me to play as a long-range sniper. And furthermore, in Strongholds I will be able to take upon a scout role more easier, because it is not always that there will be a light tank in your group. And furthermore, if your light tank gets destroyed as one of the first tanks, then it's good to have another tank in the group that can take upon the scout role. And the reasons why I've chosen a gun rammer, even the tanks reloads quite fast, this is simply because that in skirmish we really want to increase the amount of damage per minute. As many times you just go ahead and into the other tanks tanks. And this is also why I have selected the improved rotation mechanism. I personally find the improved rotation mechanism to be the most important module on this tank. This is simply because that the gun handling of a tier 6 is usually nothing special, and the improved rotation mechanism just helps this tank regarding how fast actually you're going to aim, even it doesn't state that on the description itself. If this tank had the option to select a vertical stabilizer, I would definitely have chosen that. You could switch the binoculars with decoded optics, but for this tier 6, I personally find binoculars a better selection for this tank. Okay guys, let's continue with the tank comparison against a few other T-34-85 tanks that the game has to offer. Okay guys, so here we have the tank comparison, where we will take the T-34-85M compared against the premium Rudy, the Tech Tree T-34-85, the Chinese Type 58, but also I have chosen to include the Italian P.43 BIS, as this tank is very similar in several aspects. Okay, so with the DPM, yeah, it's quite easy to see where our T-34-85M has a good advantage, especially when comparing against the Rudy and the Tech Tree T-34-85. For the rest of the firepower figures, all the Russian tanks are using the exact same gun, that each receives a penetration of 144 and an alpha damage of 180. In comparison, the Chinese Type 58 only boasts a penetration value of 128 with a low alpha damage of 160, but where the P.43 BIS is a bit interesting here is that its alpha damage of 240 for a tier 6, which is very nice indeed. In regards of the shield velocity, yes, all the Soviet tank actually receives a 950 meters per second shield velocity, and this might not seem like groundbreaking, but guys, this is a tier 6. There's several tier 8 tanks out there that actually doesn't even have that shield velocity, and especially in combat scenarios where we really need to count that your shell's actually going to hit, it just gives that extra chance to do so, especially when we compare it against the other two tanks, which both have a way worse shield velocity. But what about premium shells? And do keep in mind that each of these tanks uses APCR, and suddenly each of the Soviet tanks is capable of reaching the impressive penetration value of 194, where again the Type 58 and the P.43 BIS is behind with 172-180. This penetration value of 172-180 should be more than enough, so it should redeem itself in regards of the shield velocity, right? Well, looking at the shield velocity here, check this, 1188 for a tier 6 tank. This is very nice, guys. I got plenty of higher tier tanks that I wish that had this shield velocity. The Type 58, yeah, 990, it's not bad, but in comparison, not good enough. And then again, the P.43 BIS, check this guys, 750, just simply not good enough. Not in this comparison. Yes, the alpha damage of 240, that is a big advantage. The shield velocity, yeah. But let's not give up on the P.43 BIS, because it probably must have better gun handling, right? Well, let's take a look. So for the gun handling, well, the gun handling looks very similar across these tanks. The big difference here is that the aim time for the T-34-85M and the Rudy is 2.2 seconds, where the Tech Tree together with the Type 58 has a 0.1 worse, and the P.43 BIS receives a 0.2 worse aim time. And this trend we also see in the gun dispersion, where the 0.37 for the Soviet tanks is also better when compared against the non-Soviet tanks. When moving and tank traverse, the only tank that stands out here is the P.43 BIS, but due to that both the aim time, the dispersion figure, and the turret traverse is that much worse, then the advantage that the Italian tank gets here is simply cannot make it up for it. And this is also one of the reasons why it is not used as the preferred tank. And the Type 58 at this stage just looks like a worse copy of the T-34-85. So what about the mobility? Well, and here we start to see a bit of a difference, because the forward speed, yes, not that big. Yes, the T-34-85M 53 an hour, yeah, it's not as good as the 54-55, but it's not groundbreaking difference. And the reverse speed is the exact same. But for the power to weight ratio, suddenly the Tech Tree version has a nice advantage with a power to weight ratio of 17.83. But in general, a power to weight ratio of around 15 plus, it's really a nice power to weight ratio, especially for a medium tank. And especially if you want that tank to be that much faster, you can always add a turbocharger on your tank to give it that little extra, especially if your ground resistance would be horrible. And this was also something I was thinking about adding for the T-34-85M, due to its terrain resistances are nothing out of the ordinary. But the thing is that as I primarily use this tank in the Strongholds, I really do not want to be the first tank when we rush in. What I mean by that is when we rush a flank, we really want to do it as a whole team, because suddenly you will be assisting the enemy by giving them one target. So the choices was either the whole team is going to run with a turbocharger or none. As long as the tank has the uniform speed, it is that much easier to charge as a team. But nevertheless, those figures here are not bad at all. And for those players who primarily use the tank in random battles and do not feel that this tank is fast enough, yes, then you have the option to switch, for example, the gun rammer with the turbocharger. But personally, at least for me, I do not find it to be needed. Turret traverse, tank traverse figures are very similar all across the board, but none of them severely stands out. And for the armor and health, the 810 HP, yes, it is definitely lower than 840 or 830. But the thing is that where the T-34-85M also shines shines is really with this armor, because yes, you can directly see that the figures here, especially on the hull, looks better, but it is not groundbreaking. The 75mm of armor, how can you not penetrate that, right? And the P.43 base has 80mm. But we're going to take a closer look at that in the armor profile rundown, where I'm going to compare the T-34-85M with the Tech Tree and with the P.43 base. For the last figures, the camera values very similar all across the board. The view range 360. Yeah, the view range, it is a figure that is to expect from a tier 6 tank, and that's also why I have fitted a binoculars for my setup that makes it capable of reaching a view range of more than 500 meters. Okay, let's continue with the armor profile rundown. Okay guys, so here we have the armor profile of the T-34-85M. For this analyze, we're going to use the 144mm of penetrating shells, and here we can directly see where its strength is, which is definitely in its turret, because take a look at this, guys. There's some crazy figures, especially for a tier 6 tank. And yes, it has a gigantic cupola here, but also when shot near the gun mantle, it is also very weak, where the majority of the shells should be able to penetrate you every time. And when moving into the gun mantle, then suddenly it increases. Then here at the very edge, we actually are able to receive values of around 160. When moving closer to the turret, we have around 130. Then it gets further down, we're around 90mm. And above it, we have around 45mm, 153, around 100, and around 115mm near the gun. And just below it, 237. Moving further up, 82mm, around 117 to 82mm here, 107 to 116. You might be thinking, well, to penetrate this tank, just shoot it left and right, but you can also hit it just very close to the gun. Yes, of course. Or you can just hit the cupola and you'll be certain. And that is very easy, especially if the tank is standing still, right? But as we all know, it can actually get tricky at times. And especially in those games where the RNG just is against you, then the probability and chance that your shell might actually hit one of these sides here, especially when thinking of how big this cupola actually is, then this tank is surely able to bounce shells. What about the hull armor? It's just all green everywhere. Yes, this is definitely not a heavy tank, but let's take a look what happens here. So even with a 144mm of shell, we're not even 100% certain to penetrate anywhere here. We have around 85 to 80% chance, where the impacted armor is 75mm thick, with a small exception of the viewport, where the effective armors were around 160mm, and of course the machine gun port, which have an effective armor of 94mm. And as we reach the lower hull, the effective armor slowly diminishes, but it's still only able to offer us around 90% chance. At this yellow spot here, around 50% chance, and the lower plate 100% chance. So nothing special at this stage, right? Why am I talking about that this tank can bounce something? Well, we're not done. So let's take a look at the side armor. So for the turret itself, we're starting out with an effective armor of around 100mm and finishes off with around 80mm. For the upper hull, 53mm all across. But do notice that just above the tracks, it is only 45mm. But if you encounter a tank that is positioned like this exact way, just shoot it anywhere, guys. The interesting part here is with the tracks, because you actually have double spaced armor due to your tracks. So if you face a tank this way, he's not going to get any advantage whatsoever of the additional 2x20mm spaced armor. But when we angle it, that's something else. Because take a look, guys, what happens. And yes, check this. So suddenly, if we are properly side scraping, we can suddenly ricochet not only the majority of the shells, but suddenly the chance that we have to ricochet with our hull increases. Because now we're talking about 70% chance. And also check what happens to the viewport. Suddenly it reaches an effective armor of 175mm. But what about if this tank is moving? Imagine you're facing a tank that is moving like this. Then what will actually happen to the front arm of the tank? Well, let's see. So suddenly we're only given around 50 to 60% chance to penetrate this armor. I might be thinking, okay, I will just fire him here. But what about those scenarios where your shell maybe will go dive, or where you're thinking I will just shoot him through the tracks? Well, it actually gets absorbed. Check what happens to the lower plate at this angle. Of course, you can have a game or two where you will not bounce a single thing, but then again, and when looking at the armor profile, it is really here where the big difference between the T-34-85M is and the other variants. Because let's take a look at the Tech Tree one. Here we have the Tech Tree one, where we use the exact same shells against it. And yes, of course, it looks very similar. But take a look what happens when we try to side scrape with the tank. Because yes, the side of it, fantastic. But what about the hull? 100% chance nearly everywhere, guys. Plus, we don't have that beautiful plate here, which we have in the T-34-85. But yeah, the difference is easy to spot. And furthermore, when comparing against the Italian P.43 base, it definitely also has angles that will be able to bounce. And even the hull armor has a chance of bouncing a shell. But when side scraping, it is rather easy to hit due to its flat surfaces, both near the gun itself, the gigantic lower plate, or even its non angle side here. So yeah, the T-34-85M, without using its armor, yeah, you can bounce the shell too, but definitely nothing you should count on. But it is still good to know that as a tank commander, you can do your utmost to help the tank being able to achieve that. Because if there's a tank that will rely on you as commander to make the best out of it, and this is definitely one. Before we finish off, check guys what happens when we switch to the APCR shells, which are able to deliver a penetration value of 194. Yeah, doesn't really differ that much, right? And from the front. You might of course be wondering, what about the cupola? Everyone can just hit the cupola. Yeah, but the funny part is that everyone knows that they can just penetrate you by just hitting you anywhere in the hull, right? And usually people would also expect to just penetrate you when they hit your turret. So in a lot of cases, if your tank is positioned maybe 300, 400 or 500 meters away, kinda pointless of aiming for the cupola if your whole tank is visible, or at least the majority of it. I cannot count how many times I've heard in skirmish in the team's communication channel, people complaining about and frustrated and had no idea how the enemy T-34-85M bounced the shell. How unlucky they are. Well, that is both right and wrong. There can definitely be something regarding it. But still, in those scenarios where we play against a team that is way better than us player for player, the enemy tanks just bounce twice as often. And that cannot simply be because of the RNG. Okay guys, let's take a look at a couple of very recent gameplay replays. Okay guys, so here we are with the T-34-85M. We are playing on the Karelia. And this is an assault map. This particular game I'm playing together with Woodman and Blake. The interesting part here on this map is always the D4 location here. Because can we get a tank there early enough, then that should secure us the win. And because we don't have any light tanks, then yeah, I want to take that position. But can we get there safely? I don't know what these two guys are doing. Well, I definitely need to get away now. Seem to have caught the interest. I bounced up 2 shots here. And the next one, freeze. So you guys can see it can be quite tricky to actually penetrate from long range. KV1 is quite well armored. Especially for our normal shells, I'm just changing to premium. But can we get a target in the comment? Yeah. So the gun itself, it can take some time to settle down. But when fully aimed, it's more than precise. Churchill is moving to the right now. Probably. It's a good question where he's going. Whether he's want to support the SU-100 up there. There's definitely not be much of him left. And artillery surprisingly spotted, but let's see if we can put in a shell on that guy. It's a bit coming up in the... Finally a shell there. Yeah, wasn't a fully aimed shot, so I was hoping for a bit of RNG, so that was good. Okay, it seems a bit clear now, so I'm taking my chances of pushing. Cannot count how many times this has gone wrong. It's like thinking, okay, that's probably nothing. But if you do it early enough in the game, of course not too early, it's actually with a surprising ease you can get there without getting spotted. But always make sure that the enemy team does not have a light tank, or at least the light tank is not very close. Some strange angling by the enemy T-34-85. At least from this angle. Okay. So we reached our goal. It's 4-1, we have a nice advantage. Oh, the KV3 is still here. Can we keep him tracked? Go. Just keep him tracked there. There we go, another one. Probably have a repair kit or something. Yeah, good, yeah. Nice, nice. The nice thing about this spot is that the enemy team is quite often very afraid of pushing you if you are here, because many times you will have the advantage of the tank destroyers located here, which we don't have, but in general. Or sometimes actually you even have light tanks or medium tanks positioned there. For what reason? I don't know. But it happens. The good part, at least for us, is at this stage we have such a nice advantage. There's no deadlock. So the enemy team just can push, and it is pushing from all the angles. But this position is quite good when, especially during the deadlock, because the enemy team just have to defend their cap for 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes tend to go quite fast. That was a bit lucky shot. Just about cleaning up now and not dying. The straight wrongness, one into him. So guys, do notice that, yes, I am using binoculars in this tank, but check the spotting, 1400 spotting damage. I really personally find it a big advantage to use the binoculars on this tank, because it just tends up to get that much extra view range and spotting damage in comparison to the other. 10% bonus. Oh, bad shot. Can I clean up this one? Come on. Under pressure. Ah. 2748 damage, 1413 spotting. Not bad at all. Okay guys, so here we are on Siegfried line. We're playing on an encounter battle. And right from the start, yeah, it doesn't look that good for several reasons. First of all, we are bottom tier. Second of all, 3 artilleries. I don't know about you guys, 3 artilleries, slightly too much. I think they should lower it to a more decent figure of 0. But, yeah. Okay, anyway, let's see what we can get out of this battle here. You can see that my comrades, Woodman and Snot Vomit, are going to the G2 line. It's a bit on an aggressive line. Spot that, but let's see what happens. So we can get some initial spots from here. Ooh, was nothing. Fortunately, our comrade got hit by the lever and got completely blown up. Shot into the crumble. He loses track now, not anymore. Can we put a last shell into him? Ah, so blind shot there, but okay, we got him. Impressive shot by the enemy artillery. I'm like wondering where's I had problem finding our lighting where he was on the map. He was already up there. Interesting. And the team already capping, it's a bit early, especially for the enemy light tank. Going for a few shots. Oh, that was a bad shot. I managed to bounce the lever shot. Nice. And finish the tank with 1 damage up on spot. Let's see if we can get to the center position here. Oh, here we are. Haha. Impressive way to die on. I'm a bit mixed here. Should I push through the left line? The problem is it's always kind of tricky to get any shots, and it's better to go through the town. The only problem about the town is if you get caught out in the wrong situation, you will be completely obliterated. Okay, I got some spotting damage at least. Bit worried about those guys though, because they might kill me off in just 2 shots. Artillery knows where we are, so we have to move a bit. See if I can just push this guy slightly aside. Bad shot from me. There's another chance, there we go. Another. I have more HP than him, so I don't mind. Oh, come on. I don't mind trading shots with him. Disappeared, unfortunately. ET7 is coming. Looks like he has no idea we're here, at least for now. It's a bit lucky, that one. Even before I go, that tank can be a bit tricky to... I don't really want to do a... just... Can I put in another? Yeah, beautiful. I don't really want to trade that much, because if we get hit by... Checking my HP all the time. I have still some HP. Okay, good, good. I was trying to balance the HP. Because knowing that if you can take 1 or 2 hits, it's a big difference, and we can really decide how aggressive you can play the tank during the course of the battle. Look at that, beautiful. And the last guy, can we put a shell in time? Yeah, beautiful. So, enemy artillery left. 2557 damage, 907 spotting. Not bad. But do notice the high usage of gold ammunition, especially for this battle. Because when you are especially lower tier, and you really need to make your shots count, yeah, and there's not really much of an option there. Okay, not bad. Okay guys, for the last battle, I have chosen for you guys a recent skirmish replay. With this particular tank, yeah, it's very often that you will see the T-34-85M, or at least its Tech Tree variant. The enemy team consists purely of those tanks, besides the Type 64. Which is also a common side. The current strategy from our tank commander for this battle was to split up our medium tanks on these 2 flanks. Let's see if we can make the best out of it. It is an okay tank strategy, if done correctly. But as soon as the enemy team knows that, then they can push over this flank here effectively. So it's all about that this flank where I'm in, we kill them within seconds, so we can come in and help out. But as you already see, the enemy team is completely destroying whatever's remaining of our comrades to that. And at this stage, yeah, we can just wait and watch our last comrade being slaughtered, leaving us 2 versus 3 at this stage. Yeah, let's see, what can we do, what can we do? Because I did not choose to be where my comrade here is, simply because it will be easier for the enemy team to take us out due to the HP advantage the enemy team has. just be able to use the just Russian. I'm just hoping and I can take out the T-34 here that has nearly dead, but due to the gun depression I can see this guy here will be more secure to hit that guy. I've chosen to do that. Maybe I can go over this one. Okay. Fortunately my camera got killed. I'm 1 versus 3 at this stage. I really want to kill the T-34-85, but the problem is he knows that he's a one-shot. The best thing he can do is to hide away. Can I put in a shell on this guy though? Okay, then now that guy is definitely a one-shot. Okay, so what went through my head? If I stay here, I will get the other guy attacking me through this flank here. So I'm thinking I have to get despotted. So now the enemy team knows that I'm hiding this way, but nope. I want to get an advantage. So turn around. I'm hoping for that. What they're doing, that are just YOLOing through this way. Okay, the T-34-85 is here. I would definitely prefer just to meet this guy here while the other guys are busy flanking. Because as soon as I can. Okay, I need to prevent as many of them from firing me as possible. Okay, that guy is off. Come on. Can't do that. I need to turn my turret over towards this guy. One shot into him. The other guy most likely will be poking. Where are you? There we go. Yeah, what a game. After this game, my pulse was probably at 200 plus or something. So the T-34-85M. So is it worth the goal? Personally, definitely. And this is due to that I do enjoy Strongholds. And furthermore, as I'm often leading them too, then I do prefer having a full team of T-34-85Ms on my side. And maybe at times alongside a Type 64 or even a KV2. The thing is that initially, the biggest turn off for me about this tank was its averageness. But when you use the tank with the right skill crew, the right equipment, the right usage of your ammunition, and alongside some food, then it all starts to make sense. Because then this tank just seems to let you, as the tank commander, decide on whether this tank is just an ordinary tank or a force to be reckoned with. Because when I personally encounter one of these tanks on the battlefield, then at least for me, it is definitely not fear or respect that initially goes through my mind. But if the tank commander inside it is well skilled, then I know this tank's potential. Then this tank went from an above average level to simply being overpowered. The T-34-85M is not a tank that can do it alone. It will always rely on your level of skill. But when you do not let it down, it will reward you by being able to take on any foe on the battlefield. So that leads me to how many facepalms would I give this T-34-85M premium medium tank? You guessed it, 5 facepalms. And the thing is, it is a tank that expects you to carry it, because this tank for an average player will be just that, average. I'm personally just an average player, and there are tens of thousands better players out there than me. And if I have a bad day, then this tank can seem like the worst pile of garbage. But for those days when I feel good and where everything just seems to click, then it is simply amazing how good this tank actually is. And in those moments, it suddenly all seemed to make sense why this tank is simply the best tier 6 out there. So yeah, the T-34-85M, do not expect the tank to carry you, but expect the tank to always be ready to be carried by you. Okay guys, let's finish up. I hope that this tank review was helpful towards your decision of whether you should pick one up from the premium shop. And as always, thanks a lot for watching guys. This was my tank review number 21. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think of the T-34-85M in the comments below. And as always, if you like to see more crazy content from my side, feel free to leave a like or even subscribe. It's a big thumbs up for me and I appreciate it a lot. Cheers guys, take care and see you next time.